Good morning and good afternoon to everybody joining us today. Thanks for attending today's webcast, where we're going to be giving a technical overview of Arcserve UDP, and that includes a live demo. So my name is Mary Owen. I'm going to be helping out our host today. He is Stacy Budd. Stacy is one of our sales engineers here at Arcserve. So as we're going through the presentation and the demo, we'd love to hear your questions. So send those to us using the question section of your interface, and we'll get to those at the end of the session. Today's webcast is also being recorded, so I'll be sending out an email with a link to the recording in the next day or so that you can watch it again at your leisure if you would like to. So with that out of the way, take it away, Stacy.
All right, thank you, Mary, and good afternoon, good morning, wherever you might be. Today we're going to talk about Arcserve Unified Data Protection. We're going to talk a little bit about how that product works. We're going to also focus on the a demo of the product and show you a feature or two there based on our time. And if we have some time, maybe I'll even talk about our Cloud Direct product and our archiving product. We try to see if we can fit those in too. All depends on timing. Please send us questions as we're going through this, and we'll answer those questions at the end. I tend to set aside a little bit of time to make sure we can answer the questions that are sitting out there. If you're not familiar with Arcserve, we've been, in the industry for, it seems like for a super long time, 25 plus years. We have a worldwide presence, with customers and partners, distributed across 150 countries. We offer software solutions, we offer appliance or hardware solutions, and we offer cloud-based solutions too, as far as that goes. So, we kind of cover the gambit there based on what you need to do. When you look at the Arcserve UDP product that we're going to be mainly focusing on today, it is a on-premise backup solution that then can take and move data to other locations, to cloud, to tape. Gives you a lot of capability as far as that goes. Does bring to bear capabilities, being able to support, most of your Windows operating systems, at least the current ones, 2008 R2 and higher, even 2003, possibly as a client machine, right? So hopefully there's not too many of those still floating out there, but still run into it every once in a while. And then of course your common applications, Exchange, SQL, Oracle, things like that as well. We're going to dive into these features and functions that are kind of on here, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. We're going to instead focus on the kind of the flow of the deck here when we look at this. When we look at UDP, where does it fit? Right, so I have customers that maybe have a primary single site location, so one location that they're backing up. Maybe only a few servers. Maybe we put a small appliance in there, or they build out their own server for that. Whether it's backing up physical servers, virtual servers, Windows servers, Linux servers, whether we're doing backup, restores, disaster recovery, pretty much from that centralized management console that we see here down here in the bottom, your user experience is going to be the same. You want to send data then across the wire to a remote site, or maybe a remote site back over into this site. We can definitely do that by putting another recovery point server, another backup server at this site. You back up to that, and then you replicate between the sites. We have course leverage, technology to make the backups faster, to make the make the data that's backed up less impact on your storage. That would be global deduplication, so you have less data going across the wire, less data being written to disk, and better utilization as far as that goes. When you look at the console, it is a browser-based console. It does give you the advantage of, you can log into that browser from a client. You don't need to necessarily be on the server itself. And, pretty much you can do everything right from this browser-based console. Okay, as far as that goes. You can pull up your reports and your logs. When I show you the interface, I'm going to be in the resources tab. 90% of everything you perform is going to be in that one section of the interface. So your backups, your configuration of the data stores, your restores themselves, disaster recovery, everything is going to be in that same one section of the console. So you don't need to, you don't need to have a degree to kind of follow the console and be able to work with the interface. We take a plan-based approach, and what we mean by that is we start out with the first steps of the plan, which are usually going to be a backup, right? Either an agent-based backup or an agentless backup. After that, we're going to then add tasks to that plan. You're going to be able to add like a replication task. If you want to replicate to another location, you could copy a recovery point. That's what we term a backup, which we would rehydrate into a full. You could copy that to disk. You could copy that to cloud. You could copy it to tape if you wanted to. Right, so you have those capabilities as well. You could also replicate. So when we go back and we talk about replication, you could have another recovery point server up in a cloud location, for instance, and you could replicate to that as well. So definitely, that's kind of where it looks like, and we'll take a look at plan creation, rather quickly as we go through it. But that's what it's. When I show you, that's what we're going to be looking at. Okay. Now, the centralized server, the server that's housing the data itself, the server that's managing the deduplication, the replication, that's the recovery point server. When you look at our product, it can be broken up, a UDP can be broken up into 3 pieces. That's the recovery point server, the console, and the agent. Now, generally, you're going to install all 3 of those on your backup server. Okay, and then on your clients, on your physical machines, you would install agents. On something like Hyper-V, on the host, you would install an agent. And then on VMware, you would do an agentless backup, so there's no agent required on that. The recovery point server is the server that's going to perform the global deduplication. It's going to manage that. It's going to manage other tasks like replication I mentioned before. It's really going to go through and be kind of, if you will, the workhorse, the piece that does most of the work within the backup. There we go. When we look at our backup strategies, we default to an infinite incremental backup. You can schedule full backups, but we're going to default to an infinite incremental, and then you can go through at that point and schedule, other type of backups if you need. The advantage to the advantage to infinite incrementals is backup speed. So if you look at this slide, what you see on the left is a traditional backup. You have, full backups, occurring within a rotation. So you do incrementals, and then you do another full backup at the end of that rotation. So maybe like a weekly full or something like that. The challenge with that is really backup time, the time it takes to run that backup. Okay, that full backup. So with infinite incrementals, you actually take the full out of the rotation. You build off of a full. You do your incremental backups. You do your incremental backups on top of that within your retention policy. And once you hit the max level of your retention, we would take this full and we would merge it into the oldest incremental. So we do a merge up technology with that. All that really means is after your initial full, you're going to be leveraging incremental backups. They're snapshots. They're going to be much faster, than typical backups. And now, because we're only grabbing the block level changes, it's going to be fast on top of that. Okay. The real advantage here is going to be on speed. If you were not leveraging deduplication, the advantage is also going to be space. Those two things together, tied together, deduplication and incremental only backups, are also going to mean, just once again, less storage utilization there as well. When you go into one of these incrementals, what we present out to you is a full backup. So you see it as a full backup, even though it was an incremental backup. So you get the speed of incrementals, you get the restore capability as if it was a full backup. One of the things that we do very, very well is the way that we handle your data, the way that we are going to send that data across the wire. We're going to first determine with global deduplication what is the truly unique data. So if you look at this slide at your primary site, either whether or not we're backing up physical servers or physical servers or virtual servers, we're at first going to determine what unique data is on that machine. Okay, so out of that incremental data, or if we're doing a full for the first time, we're going to determine what is the truly unique data. Then we're going to go through at that point, and instead of sending the data to the backup server, we're going to send the hash file that gets generated from that deduplication process. We're then going to compare that to the backup destination. So other systems, the retention of data, all of that is going to get compared to. And then we're going to take and request back the truly unique data from a global perspective. When we go through and we add in, we're going to replicate that data to another site or a centralized site or up to cloud if we have a recovery point server up at that cloud location. But same deduplication process takes advantage there as well. So we always send the hash file to the other recovery point server first, determine what the truly unique data is by doing a comparison to the data store, and then take and request only that truly unique data. So this is going to mean less data goes across the wire, so you need less bandwidth in order to do that. And I do see some questions coming in. And again, keep them coming. We're just going to answer those towards the end once we wrap everything up. Okay. Now, I mentioned virtualization. We do have agentless backup for VMware and Hyper-V. We are taking a look at other hypervisors, but currently agentless is for VMware and Hyper-V. We're going to leverage VMware storage APIs, right, in order to perform that. And then again, with Hyper-V, we're leveraging the Hyper-V tools as well in order to do that. So that's how we're doing that. If you had another hypervisor, like let's say Citrix or Oracle, or KVM or something like that, we can still back up those systems. We would back them up agent-based. And like I said, we are looking at other hypervisors to roll out agentless support, as kind of the market demands it, right, if you will. So I know we have some on the roadmap now. This is going to leverage us in the case of something like, VMware with their change block tracking drivers. They already know what the unique data is, so we don't even need to use our change block tracking drivers. We leverage those change block tracking drivers, and then we turn around and from that point, they're going to present out that data. We determine what's unique, and that's what gets backed up to it. We can also take those backups that we've done and we can convert them into virtual machines, to standby machines, if you will. This capability of virtual standby, which could be local, could be remote, gives you the ability to perform disaster recovery, to your remote location. We could, on an appliance, you could do it directly there on the appliance. You could replicate first and do it at a remote location. You could perform virtual standby up to Amazon AMI infrastructure or to Azure, Microsoft Azure, if you wanted to do that. So it does give you the capability to have a DR system, in place in case you lose your primary system. You can quickly spin up a system from the backup. Okay, and it would be determined on the frequency of backup. If you go back and we think about those infinite incrementals, the benefit of infinite incrementals is you're backing up less data. Less data is being written to disk. Those backups are going to be much quicker. Now you're looking at, do I want to back up once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day, every hour, every 30 minutes, every 15 minutes in some cases, right? If your data change supports it, you can really get narrow down to that, improved recovery point objective that's going to help you better protect your data, right? And then these virtual systems can be kind of spun up from those backups, which are done more frequently. With virtual standby, right, the caveat there is I'm creating a virtual machine, right? So I have another copy of my data sitting there. I have my source data, I have my backup data, now I have my virtual system. I'm going to get the best performance from that because it's an actual virtual machine created. Not everybody has, or wants to actually create a virtual machine. We do have the capability to also leverage emulation, right? So if we look at Instant VM, we can take with Instant VM, and this was probably the feature that I'll show you in my demo environment. This gives you that capability to go through and take the next step, and emulate that your backup is a virtual machine. Great use case for this would be because virtual standby is eating up storage, you may only keep 1 or 2 snapshots for virtual standby systems, right? So when you click on a machine, it'll list out the snapshots that you have available to start up for virtual standby. But if you get it with something like ransomware, maybe you need to restore from previous to that, right? Maybe I'm backing up every hour and it takes me like 3 hours before I notice. I'm only keeping 2 virtual standbys. So unfortunately, my infection date was previous to that. Now, my backup, I have plenty of backups. I have backup retention, all of that. So I can just point to any of the previous backups with Instant VM and spin them up as virtual machines. I can leverage, do I want to do this on my appliance? Do I want to do this on my recovery point server? Do I want to point out to, a different host that I might have or something like that as well? So Instant VM gives you that capability to be able to spin that up. The time it takes to walk through Instant VM and configure it to spin up a system, as I talk through it, maybe it takes 3-4 minutes. The time to spin up a system from Instant VM is really going to be the boot time of your system. In my environments, it usually takes about 4 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes to spin up a system. Again, if you had an application that was running on there that was taking up more, that took longer time to boot up, like Exchange or something like that has a longer boot cycle, maybe it's going to increase that recovery time for you. But it's the advantage there is I don't have any hardware behind this. I am tracking changes, so those changes are being written to disk. Okay, so you have to keep an eye on that, but definitely from a perspective of having that machine actually created and sitting on disk, we're just mounting the backup, right? Other than your changes. Now, Instant BMR recovery is a Linux capability that we have. Now, generally with Windows and Linux, all the capabilities are the same across the board. The interfaces minorly different, but typically are going to be the same. Instant BMR is an exception to that. So we can do BMR with Windows, okay, and bare metal recovery, but with Linux, it's a little bit different. We're going to leverage live CD to boot up that system, and we can watch for live CD and for that system to come online. And once that system comes online, either the IP address that we assign it or the MAC address that it's given, we can then push out the bare metal recovery to it. So we don't even need to be local to the system. We can just push it out to it. Then a user starts to fetch data. They go to start using that server. We can do that actually before the entire server is restored. As they go to fetch data, we're going to grab that data from the recovery point, from the backup, and we're going to provide that data for them. So it gives you a faster rate of bare metal restore on a Linux system. Fantastic technology as far as that goes. Full system high availability. This is the ability to take on your critical servers that 15-minute RPOs or your change rate doesn't support that or something like that, to really get down to a continuous protection of your systems. So we're going to do this at the system level, and we're going to be replicating at a bit level the changes that are occurring over to a standby system that's turned off, basically a virtual machine, and we're going to be updating that virtual machine for you. So for critical systems, full system protection, ability to fail over, the ability to fail back if you need to do that, the ability to go from physical to virtual to virtual, it doesn't really matter as far as that goes, right? What's on the other side for hardware? We're hardware agnostic. We don't really care about what's going on the other side. So direct attached storage, SAN, NAS, cloud, as long as your server sees it, that's all that's going to matter to us, right? So We pretty much are going to support that. Now, this is full system high availability. We also have the ability to do application level high availability outside of the console. So we can do full system within the console, and then we can do also application or file level. If you didn't want to protect an entire system, we could do that too. Now, we have a capability within high availability and also within UDP proper, which is within your backups, to take those backups and spin them up as virtual machines, right? So in the case of high availability, I'm taking that system that I create and I'm bringing it online, right? So I'm doing a DR test with it. This is Assured Recovery is an automated DR test that gives you the capability to bring your system online, test it, and then bring it back down. Meanwhile, we continue to protect the systems, back them up. The case of high availability, replicate the changes, and once we leverage that, right, then we're going to give you, a pass fail. We can run scripts against that and all that too. So whereas your DR testing, unfortunately some people don't do DR testing, or they limit it to, quarterly or something like that, or every 6 months or quarterly, we can literally test this as frequently as you want to. Right, so definitely something that I recommend customers take advantage of, because everybody gets busy. You have all kinds of things that come up in your day, and this gives you that capability to go through and perform that DR testing. We do also include, unified reports, so we do have reports around the amount of data that you're protecting, the managed capacity, your deduplication ratios, if you're performing virtual standby, of course, assured recovery reports are going to be in there, alerts, all different kinds of reports, the amount of data that you're backing up, what's the restorable data, your backups themselves, what's going on from that perspective. And these reports, can be presented, in PDF, CSV, or HTML. So when you receive these reports, they're going to be interactive reports. So you can drill down into those reports to be able to see a little bit more of what's going on with that backup status, all of those kind of things. When you look at our appliance series, we have 4 different appliance series, and those series are the 81 through the 8400 series. Within those appliances, we offer different size appliances. We have starting with the 8100, it starts at a 4 terabyte raw, okay, going all the way up to an 80 terabyte on the 8400. Now you'll notice like the 8100 is 4 or 6 terabytes. Right. So within that, we have, different size versions for that, where we can add additional disk to that to size it up. You might be in the 48 terabyte range, right? So maybe you're in 8400 plus, a certain number of drive expansions within that. Once you have that appliance on site, if you outgrow the appliance itself, we also have the ability to have, expansion units, filled expansion units in 8 terabyte ranges that you can add to that as well. So even once you have an appliance, you're not necessarily locked into it. And if you outgrow it, you need to buy a new one. Right? We definitely have the capability to go through, and we can do some filled expansion. At a certain point, you're going to outgrow all the other hardware that's on there. So, it would make sense. Like if I was speaking to somebody and I knew they were going to outgrow the 8100 in a year, I'd probably be talking to them about a different appliance, an 8200 or even an 8300, depending on how they're going to outgrow that appliance, right? But then, if unexpected, like you purchase another company, you acquire a company, something like that. So all of a sudden you're ingesting this data, or maybe data that you didn't use to back up. Now you're backing it up, all kinds of reasons why people, outgrow appliances. Then now we have ways to definitely expand those appliances for you. We also have the ability to go through and back up Office 365. We can back up not only Exchange Online, as we show here, but we can also back up SharePoint Online as well. So we can back up Exchange Online and SharePoint Online. A lot of people, unfortunately, don't understand that Microsoft's, out of the box kind of Office 365 for Exchange, is a 30-day kind of they're providing you the ability to, always make sure that those systems are up and running, right? It's more of a continuity kind of solution than a backup solution. Past that 30 days, they're going to do a best effort, right, as far as that goes. So, we give you the ability to back up those mailboxes, back on-prem if you want, and definitely be able to have longer-term retention with that. You could also take like our archiving solution and back that up, to, for instance, like the Arcserve Cloud or on-prem if you wanted to do that. And then I say back up, but archive back, right? So you have that there as well. If we have time, we'll speak to that too. Did mention, VMware and Hyper-V agentless backups. We do support hardware snapshots for NetApp, Nimble, and 3PAR. We can back up not only servers, but also CIFS data, UNC paths are sitting out there as well. We can move data, backup data from the cloud or to the cloud, automated DR testing, detailed SLA reporting. All those are going to be in there as well. Okay. When you look at how Office 365 emails work, and it would be similar with the Exchange side of things, is that Exchange Online is then going to take in, we're only going to be backing up the selected folders. We can exclude others if we want to do that. So you can choose what you want to back up out of there. You can also choose which mailboxes you back up. You may not want to back up all those, but you can definitely back up, your emails, your calendar, your contacts, all those kind of things as you need to do that too. And a little update, I keep forgetting to update this slide, but you can back up to a deduplicated data store. So you can definitely do that. Okay. Same thing with the UNC paths, can back up to a deduplicated data store now. So directly to that, this gives us the ability to back up and protect. In most cases, I'm seeing customers with NAS systems that they want to back up data from NASs in those cases with that UNC protection. We do also support, containers, right, and be able to back up those. We support clusters, resource pools, and if you're backing up a container and you add a new VM to that container, and you're backing up the whole entire container, you can go ahead and automatically start backing up that VM as well. You can also do excludes in there if you need to do that too. Yep. So I kind of mentioned assured recovery test. I'll come back to this just for a moment. Again, not only can we do this with the high availability solution, but we do it also with the Arcserve UDP, the backup solution as well. So it leverages that same instant VM kind of technology where we're going to take that latest backup. You can choose. Do I want to test my latest backup? Do I want to test like my last monthly, weekly, daily, or whichever specific, one do I want to test? So that's within the scheduling side of it. And then we're going to take and we're going to mount that backup on a recovery system that you're going to specify, can be the backup server. And then we're going to take at that point, present it out to a hypervisor. And again, on an appliance, that hypervisor could be Hyper-V sitting on the appliance itself, right? So it gives you that capability too. And then we're going to give you the ability to put in custom. We give you the ability to trigger scripts, right? So you can, along those scripts return ones and zeros, right? Pass and fail. We're going to be able to trigger those, wait for the returns on those, and give you the, not only can we bring the machine online, but then the scripts we're able to execute properly as well. All right, so I'm going pretty good on time here. We're going to switch over now to my demo environment and log in there real quick, and we'll take a look at the interface. We'll take a look at a couple of different restores, and then that should give us some good time here to answer questions and go from that standpoint as well. So let me go ahead and log in here. While I'm doing this, definitely, keep those questions coming. I'm seeing the question box fill up, so keep those coming. So I'm in my browser. We're going to go ahead and log in. I happen to be on the server, right? But again, this could be from a client system that I'm logging into as well if I wanted to do that. First thing we're going to see is my dashboard, which is an overview of the state of my backups. I have all successful backups here. You'd expect to see that, I think. Did have some failures last week. I forgot to update my license right? So I was able to go through quickly and update that. My actual disk storage, how much disk am I using? Actually how much disk am I using versus the raw data, the restorable data. So this reflects your backups, right? And your retention policy right in there as well, plus the deduplicated data there too. Also, we give you an RPO report. I urge customers, even if you're not protecting systems, go ahead and go through and add those systems to here as well, because we'll show you the systems that we're not backing up, right? And that's always a good thing, because if you want to maybe add those or whatever, you can always going through, here's a system that I'm not backing up, is usually a pretty good report to have. Right. The resources tab, this is where we're going to go through and we're going to take a look at the capabilities of, applying and managing our backup destination, which is our recovery point server, and define that destination, encryption, deduplication, compression, those kind of things. Don't have time today to go through it, but definitely, that would be where we go through and set up where we're going to back up to. And then go through and add the machines that we want to back up, bring them in through VMware, Hyper-V, Active Directory, bring them in by qualified domain name, IP address. You're just creating a list, right? And when you go into your plans, like this particular plan is a backup, a physical backup, right? And I'm replicating this as well. So I'm replicating over to another recovery point server that I have. So we just go through and we define our source, where we're backing up to, our or what are we backing up, our destination, where are we backing up to, so where's the data store sitting on there, what's my schedule, daily, weekly, monthly. Maybe I want to add additional schedules to that, right? I want to add a weekly, monthly, or custom throughout the day, whatever we want to do to that, and what type of backup, incrementals, full verification jobs, right? Once we have that created, then we're going to go in and be able to add additional tasks. This particular one, I have a replication task added to, so we could go through and define our source is going to be a backup data. Our destination is a different recovery point server. We're going to have a retention policy set for that at that other recovery point server. And then we're going to have the ability to add in, either a replication schedule, a merge schedule, throttle my bandwidth. All of those are going to be there as well. And we can continue to add tasks. So if I go to add task, I can add that assured recovery task. I could add a virtual standby task. I could copy data out to disk or to tape or to cloud from here. We could do that as well. So all of that is going to be capabilities that we have there on top of that. Okay. If we look at restore, because recovery is going to probably be the most important steps, I did go through this morning and I created a virtual standby task just to kind of show you from this standpoint. Here's a system. I right-clicked on it. I could go up to actions, bring up a menu if I want to do that instead. But when I bring up that menu, one of my options is going to be standby the VM, because I have virtual standby created. So once I do that, it's going to list a number of snapshots that I have there. So within my virtual standby, I'm going to tell it I want to keep 1 or 2 copies for virtual standby. So those are going to be snapshots that are sitting out there on disk. And you would just choose which one that you want to select and then power on the VM. Okay. Not going to do that. We don't have that much time today, unfortunately, but you would just power on that VM and you're good to go. It's the boot time. Everything else is already created as far as that goes. If instead I wanted to go to that same system or a different system, doesn't really matter, and we want to create an instant VM, again, it's just a menu option here, create instant VM. And I'm going to go through, and point to any of my backups that are sitting on disk. Now I'm not going to be limited to, to storage right here. So I might have more backups sitting on disk. I choose one, select the virtualized platform that I want to present out to, VMware or Hyper-V, choose the host that I want to present it to. And as I go through this, do I want the backup server, the recovery point server, to be the server that performs that emulation, or do I want a different server to perform that emulation? This comes down to workload, right? If my backup server doesn't have a lot of free resources, you know, and things like that, maybe I want this secondary server that's not doing as much to be able to do that, okay? Then the last step is really defining, do we want to give it a description? Where on that server, that recovery server, am I going to mount my backup? Again, we're not doing a restore, we're just mounting it. And then what kind of resources do I want to give that system? You know, how much memory do I want to give it, etc. How many processors? Do I want to connect an adapter to it? You know, what are those adapter settings going to be? Do I need to change the host name? Those kind of things. And then once we finish, we're able to go through and boot that system. And in my environment, it's going to come up in, you know, roughly, you know, it takes about 4 minutes for me to boot a system in my environment. Actually, that's my other environment. You know, this one might actually be quicker because I have a little bit more resources behind this. So, you know, it gives you a rather quick method to be able to bring up those systems and start those systems. So if you go over to your vSphere, there's that system was just created. There we go. And if we go ahead and open a console, right, we can come back over to this in a little bit and see that system up and running. Okay. If we come back over to UDP, all right, and look at some of our restore options, then we'll be able to go in and define, you know, what we want to do from a restore standpoint. File level restore, folder level restore. Let's go back to our domain controller there. Choose a restore. Again, I just right-clicked, chose restore from my menu. I know I did that rather quickly there, but now we have the option to go in and browse our recovery points, choose our backup date, when we did the backup, and browse down into those backups and determine what I want to restore, right? What file or folder. We can also do the same thing, but through Windows Explorer. So if I explore out to my backup destination, okay, right click on a system, switch to a recovery point view, and now I can drill down into it, find a backup, drill down into that backup, and do the restore there as well. I think that's actually been merged out. Okay. From a standpoint of other restores that we can do, we can, if this was a virtual machine, I could restore the entire virtual machine back into the virtual environment. I can create a bare metal restore CD to boot the system off of, or USB stick, boot up the system and do a restore to dissimilar hardware, bare metal restore if I need to do that. We can also restore Active Directory. So if I need to go in, choose my backup date, be able to go into that system, and then choose what out of Active Directory do I want to restore, at what level. So here's my Arcserve domain. Do I need to restore top level? I hope you never have to. Do I want to instead restore something like users, a specific user maybe, or an attribute out of that user, right? So those are all going to be capabilities that you have, right? Can do authoritative and non-authoritative restores from that standpoint. And if we wanted to restore data such as, you know, SQL and Exchange, we have the ability to do that. Granular restore within Exchange, database level, or with SQL to be able to do that. Of course, we can do Oracle restores, all those as well. A lot of times I've spoken to customers, if you need to do a table level, you know, restore for SQL, why not spin it up as an instant VM, grab that table, and then you're good to go. It's the quickest way to probably do it. And if we take a look, is that system up and running? Well, it's almost there. Okay. All right. We're at our login screen on that system. Right. So pretty much good to go. is an older system, 2003 R2, but I was able to support that from a backup standpoint, was able to support that from a DR standpoint as well. Okay. Now I kind of blew through that a little bit quickly because I did see one of the questions was somebody was asking me to focus a little bit on Cloud Direct, right? So I do want to, take a few minutes and kind of speak to the Cloud Direct product, right? And backup as a service and disaster recovery as a service. By all means, I probably won't do this justice, so I do urge you, if you're interested in Cloud Direct, reach out to us. We can do, a deeper dive presentation. But there are two sides of Cloud Direct, right? There is where I just want to back up my data, right? I only care about backing up the data to the Arcserve cloud, or where I need to actually be able to spin up my systems in the cloud as well. So we have backup as a service, we have disaster recovery as a service, DR as a service. Now, with DR as a service, we can spin those systems up in less than 5 minutes, and we can perform that backup as frequently as every 15 minutes, right? So very aggressive. And I think it's 15 minutes, hour, every 6 hours, or daily. Backup as a service is going to be a daily backup, okay? The key features about the Cloud Direct backup as a service, there is no on-site hardware with this, right? So there's a replication agent that would get installed on your physical machines. For VMware, we have a virtual appliance that you can download, an OVA file that can discover your environment. And for Hyper-V, you can install the replication agent directly on your hypervisor. And that's the way that we would support those, right? Data is encrypted in motion and at rest, okay? And it does support Google two-factor authentication there as well, okay? It is a web-based management console, meaning that you do not need to be on site, right? You do not need to have on-site connectivity. You'd be sitting at Starbucks or something like that and manage your restores, your configuration, whatever you need to do. From an architecture standpoint, what we're going to be looking at with an architecture standpoint, again, is you either have the agent or the virtual appliance, in the environment. You're then going to configure that and have that configured what you want to be backing up, entire systems, volumes, individual files and folders. And then we're going to take that data and we're going to transfer that data, to an Arcserve cloud infrastructure. So we manage and operate this. We're not partnering with anybody. It's not another vendor's cloud, that we're just relabeling as Arcserve, right? It is managed and operated by Arcserve, right? And then we can also keep the latest copy of your backup, on-prem. So if that's, of value to you and you want to be able to support, an on-prem, we can keep just the latest backup there on-prem as well. Our, data centers, they are housed in, data centers that, meet industry standards and requirements, SOC 1 Type 2 audited data centers. We do have them in California and New Jersey. And if we have anybody from across the pond, we do have one over in England as well. So we do have a European presence there too. Okay. And once again, it is managed through a web-based console. So you do not need to have direct access to that. From a perspective of disaster recovery as a service, one of the things that we're going to do for you or with you is when you sign up for that, we're going to work with you so that your connectivity is pre-configured and pre-planned so that when you do need to fail over, you can just go ahead and click that system so that you can go ahead and fail over that system. And that should be, a recovery time objective, right, of less than 5 minutes. The time it takes to boot up a server basically is the time it's going to take in order to do that. Your connectivity to that, your site-to-site or point-to-site connectivity, we're already going to have that in place working, that we've set up with you. Any firewall exceptions, all of that, we want to have that pre-planned so that you're not trying to figure that out at the last minute. How am I going to have my users connect to everything? Okay. Right, so platform support, we definitely support physical servers, we support virtual servers, we support, Windows. From a disaster recovery as a service, we support Windows only, right? Windows servers only. From a file level support, we support Windows, Linux, and Mac, so that would be backup as a service that we would support from that level. So we do also support that there too. When we look at the infrastructure, the architecture for the disaster recovery as a service, it's going to mirror a lot of what we saw for, backup as a service. You're going to have the agent installed, at the client system, or in the case of, virtualization, you're going to have the virtual appliance on VMware installed for that as well. Data is going to be transferred across to the Arcserve cloud, right? The portal is going to allow that centralized management of your account. This is also a multi-tenant solution too. So you could have customers that have, and I've even seen the multi-tenant used in like school districts, where maybe individual schools might have their own IT staff, so they have access to their data, and then the school district has an all up where they see everybody, all the different schools, right? And they can manage that way. And then you also have the ability from an MSP standpoint to do that from a customer side of things too. Okay. When it comes to failover, and I'll show you that in the system when I bring up the console here in a moment, it's a matter of just going through and activating that disaster recovery. So fairly straightforward when it comes to that. So enough talking about it. Let me go ahead and bring over my console. So let me just copy over my browser here real quick, and we're going to just sign in. So we're going to just go out to our website, log in with our credentials, and then I'm backing up two different systems here. I'm backing up a server I have in my backup environment, and then I have my laptop that I back up as well. If I wanted to deploy this out, I would just download my Cloud Direct agent or my a virtual appliance for VMware I can download there as well. For virtualization, again, I can download that on this page too. Once we download that virtual appliance, it's going to discover your virtual environment, and you're going to enable those systems for backup that you want to protect. For disaster recovery, we're going to go through and we're going to configure our disaster recovery, and then once we need to actually spin that up, we just need to activate it. Kind of skipped an important part here, my systems themselves. If we go into configuration, how am I going to do that? Well, for a system that's not enabled for disaster recovery, I'm the option to do a daily backup. I'm going to choose the volume I want to back up to, right? And these volumes can have different retention policies. And then I can choose, what type of backup task do I want to do? Image, the entire drive, files and folders, exchange data, any scripts I want to put in pre and post there as well. Again, kind of doing a light coverage of this just to kind of make sure we go through that and do that. Now, this one is enabled for disaster recovery as a service. So if I go into this system, you'll notice I can back up every 15 minutes, every hour, every 6 hours, or on a schedule if I want to do that as well. Okay. So you can definitely have those. Everything else from a backup task, we're backing up the entire system, maybe just one drive, but I could go through, and exclude drives if I want to do that there as well. Okay. From a restore perspective, back on my systems page, I can go into that system. I can choose restore, choose the volume that I'm backing up to, choose my date that I want to restore from, and then browse down into that data that I've backed up. And I have a couple different options. I can restore through the actual interface. I can also take this and just make this a share, right, and do that as well. So several different ways that I can perform that restore from that perspective. From a disaster recovery perspective, I can come in here. It's going to show me, the boot screens that it's brought up the system. This one hasn't been running a month yet, but once it runs a month, I'll have a login screen there. And then we can always do automated DR, not automated, but manual DR testing, activate systems. We want you to do that as well. And then here's going to be our configuration for point-to-site and site-to-site connectivity. Lastly is kind of just, when we take a look, I'm going to skip, volumes and usage reports and those kind of things. The last kind of things is, who has access to the data and to the console itself. So do we want to turn on Google two-factor authentication? Do we want to add users to that? We have different roles based on what kind of access we want to give those users. An admin role can do everything, manage the storage, the backup plans, the restores, they can do everything, manage tickets, all of that. From a storage perspective, we can have a role that just manages the volume retention, recovery points, those kind of things, manage support tickets. And then lastly, you can always give somebody a restore role where they can go in and restore their own data as well. Okay. So very, very brief overview of there. I hope that kind of gave you an idea of it. Again, I welcome you guys to reach out to us for a more in-depth presentation on Cloud Direct and kind of take a look at that. Left us about, 9 minutes here to kind of cover questions that are sitting out there. So let's go ahead and get this out of there. So I do have a question, around, and let's go ahead and start reading through these. What's the speed like for a full restore with your incremental forever, right? On their current solution took about 24 hours, all local. Okay, the restore speed, and that's always one of those questions that kind of, it depends on what's behind, what are you restoring to, what kind of connectivity you have that you're restoring over from. And I notice here that, you stated about 120 gigs, and also the different types of the backups, right? So if I'm going to be restoring, a virtual machine, it's going to be much quicker to do a virtual machine level restore than it is going to be if I'm doing a bare metal restore, right? As far as that goes as well. I don't have like a time to give you. I can tell you that it's not going to be, probably 24 hours to restore 120 gigs. You're not going to have that experience, but again, it's really going to depend what you have behind it, what speed drives, what speed network are you going over, and those kind of things as well. But I can almost guarantee better than 120 gigabytes, okay, as far as that goes. Can you back up individual OneDrive files in the Office 365 environment as well? We don't currently support OneDrive with Office 365. It is, on the roadmap. It's one of the things that we're adding. We added SharePoint first. We did Exchange Online, and then we added SharePoint. So it is on, it is on the roadmap there as far as that goes. But today it's Exchange Online and SharePoint only support for that. Okay, and then are you going to cover the Hyper-V Windows Arcserve? I think most of everything that I showed from a restore perspective and all that was specifically around VMware, but to let you know, it is going to be, and it would be the same whether or not we're doing VMware or Hyper-V. So from restores and from all of that, that functionality is going to be the same. Same thing with Cloud Direct, right? With Cloud Direct, you put that replication agent on the hypervisor itself, then it'll list out all the virtual machines, and then you're able at that point to be able to go through and, activate the systems and enable the systems for backup, just like you do on the VMware side. If you want, additional information on that, feel free to reach out to us and we can set up a demo specifically around Hyper-V for you as well. That kind of wraps it up here, unless we have any other questions sitting out there. Mary, do you have any other questions?
We do have a couple of questions coming in that now they're just kind of pouring in, just comments. And
Gotcha. So we do, yep, and we do have a clarification on the Hyper-V, right? So the Hyper-V that comes with the UDP appliance, right? So definitely, so the Hyper-V that comes with the UDP appliance, it can be leveraged as a, when I did that instant VM, we could point to that Hyper-V on the appliance as the hypervisor itself in order to do that. We could leverage it for the assured recovery testing to be able to do that as well. So that's kind of the point of that system, and that Hyper-V that's on there is to be able to go through with that. Okay. Do you have some questions about, customers that are on Arcserve backup, and whether or not they can, leverage that, plans and those kind of things? UDP is a different, it's a different kind of perspective as far as that goes. There are some ways where you could take and you could ingest that data if you want to do it from a data perspective. So there are some ways we could do that. It'd be like some creative things. You'd restore the data, then you'd back up that restored data to that from that location. But no, just within the console, be able to do that. What I've seen, my experience with customers that are currently on either other backup solutions or on our traditional Arcserve backup solution, is they keep that for their retention, because they need to still retain that data for years. And then they can start leveraging the disk side of Arcserve UDP to give them the faster side of that. In some cases, you may still need to go off to tape, right? Especially if you're in medical or something like that, or legal, where you have to retain data for 7 years or even longer. You may find that tape is still a good media for that. And I've even talked to some government officials, right, that won't go out to cloud or things like that. So then at that point, you turn around and tape is still got a place in kind of those environments. So you could still leverage Arcserve, and in the background, we're going to leverage Arcserve backup in order to do the tape side of things, but you're going to do it through UDP in most cases. So if you have that experience with Arcserve backup, it's just going to strengthen in those cases. Good question here. How is UDP different than the dedupe in Arcserve backup? So we talked a little bit about deduplication and deduplication, from a global perspective. And this is not only to Arcserve backup, but this is also to, other solutions that provide deduplication. We do not require a landing zone, right? So we're determining in memory what the unique data is before it ever lands on disk. So, and like one of our appliances, if you look at the 4 terabyte, entry level 8100, okay, you're getting 4 terabytes raw. Just because you're deduping, you're going to be able to now put, additional data on there, maybe 6 terabytes of data, maybe even more terabytes of data, right, as far as that goes. So, not having to say, okay, my usable out of 4 terabytes is only 3 terabytes or 2 terabytes, now opens up you to be able to put that much more additional data on the box there too. So no landing zone is going to be the primary difference for that, and all of that managed in memory before it ever hits disk. All right, give it a minute here to just see if we have any other questions come in. I did skip one here about cloud direct backup of Active Directory. Kevin, to be honest with you, I'm gonna have to double check on that one, right? I don't know. I know we could do it as a system, no problem. Individual Active Directory, I've not attempted. I'm sure it's just something I haven't attempted there, but we'll do some research and get an answer for you on that particular one. Last question, and then we're going to wrap this up. Does UDP require your hardware, right? So an appliance would be on our hardware, right? So that would be one route, but that we also offer it as a software solution where we would work with you based on the amount of data that you're protecting, what's your retention policy, your growth, all of that. And Do you want to leverage deduplication? We talked to you about, the different memory requirements we need for deduplication. All of that would help us build out not only the appliance that you would need, but then also if you're going to build out your own server, this is the specs that you would build that too. So somebody like myself, a pre-sales consultant, could work with you to make sure that you have the right specs and everything from that perspective too. All right, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up and hand it back over to Mary. But I appreciate everybody's time today and look forward to our next webcast.
Thank you, Stacy. Thanks so much for that great presentation and the demo. You packed 2 demos into one there, which I'm sure the audience appreciated. And thanks to all of our attendees for spending this time with us. We'll be sending out a recording of this presentation shortly, so keep an eye out for that. And if you have any additional questions, we will be happy to talk to you. So if you want to go out to arcserve.com, you can download a trial, you can start a live chat with us, or you can call us directly. And I did see that one of you wants a call afterwards, so we will reach out to you shortly. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day.